Welcome to Inclusion Counts. My name is Rick Williams. I'm the Business Inclusion Manager for the City of Pittsburgh, Office of Equity, Office of Mayor William Peduto. Inclusion Counts is a show that educates, informs, and inspires minority women and veteran contractors across the state of Pennsylvania with a local focus. It's a monthly conversation with subject matter experts, government practitioners, and businesses that operate in the space every day. The goal of the program is to share resources, provide capacity building information, and to also promote contract opportunities for vendors in this region. Our first guest today is Jen Olzinger, Assistant Director, Procurement Manager for the City of Pittsburgh. Jen is a recurring guest on our show. We haven't seen Jen in a while because of the exciting new initiatives and programs going on in the procurement space. Welcome back, Jen.
Hi, Rick. Thanks for having me.
How's it been going? In the space, I know we're still working from home. I know we're still dealing with the pandemic and so forth. I know things have been changing in the city. And so want to give us just give us a quick overview of what's going on, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, we've been very busy. My team is still working fully remote, and I'm fortunate to have a very dedicated team that has still been able to accomplish a lot without being in the office. We're doing a lot of sustainability and socially responsible initiatives. We're working on our first quarter 2021 buying plan. We've been doing some educational sessions for small businesses on how to do business, done that all virtually. So all that along with all of our regular contracts and everything that we've been putting out. So I'm pretty proud of what everybody's been able to accomplish, especially doing it all remote.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things I wanted to focus on with you today is about those educational sessions with the University of Pittsburgh in collaboration with our office, the Office of Equity, and the City of Pittsburgh's Small Business Resource Center. Can you give us any updates on the program, and also how can people be involved if they want to have an opportunity to view some of the sessions or be part of it moving forward? Can you give us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the City of Pittsburgh, I think, as I had mentioned on my last appearance on your show, that we received a grant from Living Cities funded by Citibank for inclusion and small and diverse businesses, minority-owned, women-owned, and just small business in general, to help uplift those businesses and make reduce barriers to contracting with the city, to make it more amenable to them and more efficient, more timely, and just looking for things all around to help improve their chances of getting contracts with the city. So one of the things we did with the grant money is we teamed up. We originally wanted to have an event, but then COVID told us, no, you can't have an event. So we're like, okay, well, now what are we going to do? Because we still wanted to have some education parts for these types of business owners. So with Oliver Beasley in the mayor's office, their Office of Equity, and Chuck and Durham in the EORC office and his staff, along with myself and Riley Stewart, we teamed up with Mike Houlihan and his team from Pitt's Small Business Development Corporation. And they were able to put together, actually pretty quickly, 3 really nice education sessions that we had via Zoom, and we recorded them. And along with each session, they also provided a packet of information and forms and all kinds of reference materials for each of the different sessions. So we offered them starting late September and throughout October. Every other week we did another session, another class, I would call them. And we had over 90 businesses attend the courses, all 3 courses. It was very well attended. And they walked the businesses through everything from, signing up for Beacon, which is our website, helping them prepare the documents that they need to bid, talking to them about how to have an elevator pitch ready for, just things just that not only help them to do business with the city, but to help them grow their business in general. They talked about the EORC paperwork and what that means for the city and what those requirements are. We talked about things like building resumes, building a one-page pamphlet for their business. They gave them all kinds of resources and different things, and also let the company know all of the different things that the SBDC over at Pitt can provide to all of these companies free of charge. They can get them in touch with loan programs. They can get them in touch with people to help them learn how to market their business. There's just so many things that the SBDC has to offer that a lot of these companies weren't aware that they could access. And again, that they are federally funded, and that is all free. So we recorded these sessions, and we also have all of the educational materials and packets that they made to go along with them. And we're going to be posting them on the city's purchasing website, and that's just purchasing.pittsburghpa.gov. And those, the videos of the sessions and those informational packets are going to be posted online in early February. So anybody who missed those sessions in education and still wants to go through them can go back and listen to them and still get all of the same content that they would have had they been able to attend back in October.
Wow, that's great. I mean, I'm glad that we were part of the Living Cities cohort. In fact, my next guest is Joann Massey from the City of Memphis. She also received the Living City grant as well. And some of the things that we're involved with now actually came from the City of Memphis. And I'm excited about that conversation moving forward. And it's good that we have, I guess what makes the city different and from most other cities is that we have that relationship with universities. The ERC has partnered with Pitt, with Chatham, with Chatham's Resource Center, with far as the Women's Business Institute that they do the entrepreneurship phase, Carlo, and you figure we could access that and kind of have that continuum of support and services, and ERC being a resource to that and being that bridge, so to speak. As Pittsburghers, we create bridges, and basically we're good collaborators, which is good. With collaboration, and we've talked about being collaborative and so forth. There's a buying plan that you've developed, right, through the Living Cities cohort, and we talked a little bit about during our prep session about the city departments. Now, it's not just for city departments, correct?
Right.
And what type of procurements are and opportunities are in that buying plan?
Yeah, so as I mentioned briefly earlier, that we are just about to release our Q1 2021 buying plan, and that's going to give an outlook for any business that wants to do business with the city. It's targeted to help small businesses so they can plan ahead to know when these procurements are coming so that they can prepare themselves better, team up with prime contractors and anything of the like. But what that does is gives a year outlook. So 4 quarters out. So the January one that'll be released here soon will give a look of everything that not only the city and its 19 departments are going to be purchasing throughout 2021. It will also give information for all 5 city sister agencies. So it will give you the information for the Urban Redevelopment Authority, for Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority, for the Housing Authority of the City of Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Parking Authority, the Sports and Exhibition Authority, and also the city's Equipment Leasing Authority that all of the city's fleet needs are purchased through. So, and we are hoping, we should know soon, if it's not this quarter, then next quarter, we are also going to be adding Allegheny County's Division Office of Purchasing and Supplies. So it won't be everything for the county because some of their departments are very segregated and they're a lot larger, so they're not as centralized. But it will give everything coming out of their main purchasing office as well. So we do intend to expand and grow on that buying plan and continue to add other agencies. We're talking about trying to add things like Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy, Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership. We're trying to model it after the city of Chicago. We started small. We started at home. Now we've been doing this. This will be our third version. So now we're ready to take it a little further and expand it. But the buying plan like I said, it gives every agency that I just discussed what they're going to be buying for the next year, when they're going to be buying it, as for what quarter that they're estimated to buy it, and the approximate spend and amount of that contract award. And it covers everything from professional services, commodities, construction, anything and everything that any of these agencies are buying. It's very, very comprehensive. So additionally, we hope to expand eventually to even be able to add, the airport authority, CCAC, anybody as we expand who's willing to do that, and to give as much of a one-stop shop look at a buying plan for, the whole county as much as we can, and as far as we can get and expand to do that. So, and there is a section that each agency describes kind of what they are, what their vision is, and whatever their procurement website is, and any contact information for those specific agencies, and how to sign up also to get their notifications. I think a common misconception is that if you sign up for the city's Beacon website, that you're getting all of the opportunities in the city, and you are only getting those that the city themselves put out. So this buying plan will help direct them to get a more comprehensive view, and just direct them to the resources of all of the agencies so that they can get every opportunity that the city and its authorities, and again, as we expand into some county authorities and other even non-government agencies like the PDP or PPC, they can, have one place to go to find out a whole bunch of information.
So if I'm a contractor listening, I could go on the Beacon site to be able to access the buying plan. And if I wanted to see what the housing authority is doing, would I be able to do that through the site, or will there be a link within the site that I have to go in to get the housing authority information?
Right. Yeah. So when you go into the buying plan in the housing authority section, there will be a link to their site.
Okay. So there's a page on the website. So once I come into the buying plan, there'll be a link for the housing authority, and I could go in and get the procurements there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a link and information and contact information for all of the authorities and agencies that are listed on the buying plan. And as we add more, obviously we will add their links and everything as well.
And what everyone talks about, how do we track the spend? How do we track the participation? Is it going to be individuals within those entities that they have to track their participation on their contracts? And are they reporting it to the city? Or you have to go on their link, decide to see what their reports are? How is that going to come into play, or that hasn't been fleshed out?
Yeah, reporting wise, each agency has their own process for that. The city and the housing authority, and that report to the EORC. The URA reports themselves. They have their own office. So each agency does it a little bit differently. The county, hopefully when we add them, they also have their own MWDBE Office of Diversity that's similar to our EORC, and the county then they would report up to their own internal agency. So as far as a central database of all of that and recording, we're kind of far from that. That'd be great to have someday. But that would take a lot of collaboration and cooperation from all of those other entities to be able to have some sort of central repository for everything that happens in the city.
I mean, that's just great steps though, that we've came a long way, instead of the individual type of thing. And as a whole, as a region, we'll probably end up saving and also be able to expand our vendors in our space. And that's kind of the goal of this whole thing, is to give opportunity ahead of time. And I think, a couple months ago when you were on the show, you mentioned that people can partner together, possibly joint ventures and teams on various projects coming across. And they could go more than just the city. They could go to the other authorities. Potentially, it seems like you're looking at, quasi-government entities as well. The county, I mean, that's great stuff. I guess, we want to talk about some other things that you're doing there. I know you had mentioned about an equity study, and it kind of intrigued me a little bit because we're in the Office of Equity, and I wanted you to kind of explain that particular project and the multitude of opportunities that come into play there, because this is a citywide project.
It's a light equity. So as the city is, as part of the mayor's, all of his different climate initiatives, one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be moving to LED streetlights. So we are going to be doing a procurement later this year, probably spring or summer. And as part of that project, we're going to be having a light equity study done in that procurement. So what that means is whatever consultant or whatever that we hire, to not only count all of our street lights, get work to have all of the bulbs replaced to LED through different phases. They will also be doing a light equity study to show us where in the city are areas that are currently poorly lit, that we don't have enough street lights, and if certain areas are too dark and everything, that can lead to crime and other things. So there's going to be a lot of recommendations on as a city as a whole where we need to add street lights to not only just to provide safer communities.
Now, will there be opportunity for community input on that? I know that you're in the procurement phase, and I don't know, this is like a community, I guess, community affairs or city planning type of thing.
Yeah, at some point they're probably going to have some community engagement with because it'll be working with the sustainability department, which is part of this city planning. So they have a community engagement tool, and that will definitely be utilized for input in that process as well. I would assume they're going to publish the study, as well somewhere, whether it be through that platform or just on the city's website. But that's good. We're probably about a year away for even getting the results from that study, because we haven't even procured it yet. They're still writing that. So.
Wow, yeah, that sounds exciting. I mean, there's a triple bottom line on this thing, and you figure it addresses a public safety concern. You have contract opportunities, hopefully locally and multiple vendors, and then also it's a savings to the city because LED lights are a lot more cost efficient than the fluorescent lights that we use in our homes.
More climate friendly too. So.
Yeah. So again, that's the fourth thing.
Lots of wins on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So as always, Jen, you're a wealth of information that we probably need to dedicate a whole show for. To talk about all the procurement changes that are beneficial to city residents and the minority, women, and veteran contract community. And thanks again for being on the show. And we're looking forward to having you more often on the show to talk about some other things. I know there were some other things we wanted to talk about, but I know because of the sake of time, we had to kind of cut it short a little bit. But I think that the buying plan, I think it's an exciting thing that a lot of people could kind of rally around. They could see it's tangible. They could be involved with. They could see the collaboration with the multiple entities that are participating in this. It's just a great thing. And thanks to your leadership and as well as the team of the Office of Equity to make this happen. So again, thank you for being on the show, and we'll see you next month, hopefully.
Thanks, Rick. See you next time.
Hi, I'm Freddie Greenwood, and I am the Help Desk Team Leader for the City of Pittsburgh's Department of Innovation and Performance. I have worked here for almost 2 decades and have always enjoyed how friendly and helpful my coworkers are. I feel like my opinion matters and my voice is heard. And I am using my customer service talents to help my community in the process. If you would like to work for the City of Pittsburgh, just go to pghjobs.net or call 412-255-2710. We are the City of Pittsburgh.
Our next guest on the show is Joann Massey from the City of Memphis. Ms. Massey currently serves as the City of Memphis's Director of Business Diversity and Compliance. Joann is also the founder and principal consultant for Lewis Massey Associates, LLC. In both roles, she's responsible for counseling clients on business expansions, acquisitions, procurement opportunities, and navigating community government ecosystems. Ms. Massey has also served as the lead business consultant for Governor Bill Haslam's Tennessee's the Department of Economic and Community Development. Joann successfully managed to secure over $300 million in investment for West Tennessee counties through new business expansion. Ms. Massey has experience in both public and private sector organizations, including financial services, banking, real estate, and local government. She, as well as yours truly, received the Contract Compliance Administrator certification from Morgan State University as part of the American Contract Compliance Association National Training Institute. She has been a guest panelist for several prestigious conferences, such as City Summit by the National League of Cities, the Founders Network, Annie Casey Foundation, Results for America, as well as a guest speaker for the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. Her subject matter speaking engagements include topics on economic and workforce development, equity, and diversity and inclusion. With that said, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So how are you doing today? I mean, in the midst of COVID, how is the City of Memphis doing overall? What type of things are you doing to kind of secure the residents as well as our businesses in your space?
Ricardo, I'm really proud of the response that the City of Memphis and our area, our county and other local governments that we have here, other municipalities have taken in response to COVID. We created a regional task force that is tackling this not only from the health emergency, but economic emergency side. In that task force, we meet twice a week to speak with our hospitals and schools and again, other elected officials to help respond. We are on the decline right now in our numbers, and I'm very proud of that. It's been for about the last 2 weeks or so, we've been on the decline. And most recently, our mayor announced a $200 million investment into capital improvements in our community that we hope will reap a lot of opportunities for small minority and women businesses to participate. And we see a lot of momentum coming with Memphis, and our jobs number are actually at pre-pandemic ranges right now. We're at 8.16 Yeah, 8.6, which is close to where we were in unemployment pre-pandemic. So I'm really proud of where we're going, but there's a lot of work to do, and we are doing it together.
Yeah, I guess with that said, I guess we need to kind of take a step back and have you give a description about the city of Memphis, its total population, racial demographics, and historical relevance to our country and the local business community. And your overview will kind of level set our conversation about the initiatives that you've done and how your team has spearheaded the change of business in the city of Memphis.
Sure. Well, I came aboard in 2016. Mayor Jim Strickland, who had been a city council representative, he's an attorney, had been a city councilman for about 8 years, took office in January of 2016 and hired me in February of 2016. Memphis is what we like to call a big southern small town. So there's 3 degrees of separation from everybody. The way that you greet a Memphian is by saying, what high school did you attend? And if depending on the high school, that would give you a lot of qualities and characteristics about the person and their interests. But Memphis truly is a beautiful city. We have everything from great food to, great music, but we also have a really rich history. We have corporations like FedEx, International Paper, and the Children's Hospital St. Jude. We have a history that has really stood the test of time. And in this community, we are 63% African American. Our population within the city of Memphis is about 600,000 or so, but we're located in what's called Shelby County. And Shelby County is made up of 7 municipalities, with Memphis being one of them. So we have 7 mayors within Shelby County, and then we have our county mayor. So there's 8 mayors within this community, which tends to get really interesting, especially when you are debating hot topics like workforce, economic development, equity, and inclusion. But the total population for Shelby County is roughly about 1.6 million, I believe, or so. So it really truly is a big city, again, in a small town. Historically, though, what we are known for, besides our music, besides Elvis Presley, and besides our beautiful riverfront, is the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. It happened here. And more than 52 years ago, when Dr. King came to continue his fight, not just for social justice for our nation, but he was on a fight for economic justice. The sanitation workers here had really hit a brick wall, and Dr. King and those who supported him were determined to ensure that they received what was fairly theirs and the fair treatment, and he lost his life here. We carry that burden as citizens. From a little bitty child, my mother, whose birthday is today, happy birthday, Mom, today. She was 8 years old when Dr. King was assassinated. And she has told me the story of how she remembers sitting in front of the TV, her mother wailing out, screaming and in tears that they shot him. She remembers, and we all remember. And so the fight that Mayor Strickland and this administration has taken up in 2016 when he was elected to fight for diversity, inclusion, and economic justice has been one that is really deeply rooted in those traumas and those tragedies that our nation has experienced.
Wow. I didn't know the historical relevance. I mean, I knew about Dr. King and everything, but sharing your personal testimony just really brings light to everything, that it runs deep and it runs through generations of Memphis residents. And it probably, it really ingrains to kind of see people who've lived in that time frame or was exposed to that time frame growing up. They're probably excited now, seeing of all the things that Mayor Strickland has done, that you and your team have done moving forward. And with that said, you developed a buying plan for the city of Memphis. And so I'm going to ask the question, even though you might have answered a little bit about from the historical standpoint, but I wanted to see what kind of motivated you and motivated the team to develop this directory, this at a glance directory.
Yeah. So Ricardo, like I said, the mayor took office in 2016 and he actually campaigned on minority contracting opportunities, including minority businesses and city contracting opportunities. There was a man, his name's Fred Davis, and Mr. Davis actually just passed last year in 2020. Mr. Davis was the first elected city council person, first Black elected city council person. So he was actually on the city council when Dr. King came to Memphis. He walked with him. He had an insurance business here in Memphis for about 50 years. And Mr. Davis would always say to the mayor, and this is the mayor's story when he was councilman, Mr. Davis would always say to him, that only 1% of the receipts in our economy here in Memphis, mind you, I said we have FedEx International Paper. We're the second largest medical device manufacturer in the world. The first place is Idaho, and Memphis is second. And Memphis is second because of FedEx and our location, and we're the only place in the world that can get a package out after 12 midnight and get it anywhere in the world within 24 hours or by the next day. But nevertheless, with all of those assets, only less than 1% of our total receipts in our economy goes to Black businesses. And Ricardo, it's been like that for 20 years. And so I mentioned Mr. Davis because he was a city council person and he would always say to the mayor, just in passing, we need to change that. We need to change that. And so when the mayor became mayor, he set out on making sure that we made a change, that we impacted that. And so with the directory, what we found was when we took office here, we only had 135 businesses on the directory. Now, relevant to the last census data that we had 49,000 Black-owned businesses alone in this city. Only 787 of them had more than one employee, but we had only 135 of them on the directory. A lot of that was bureaucracy. Some of it was, the government not really having control over our list. We depended on third party, agencies to provide us with the businesses. So we set about changing that. And today we have over 600 plus businesses on that directory. But more importantly, with the buy901.net, which is what you're referring to with our directory, it gives access and visibility to those businesses who are ready to do business with the city. It not only with the city though, but with our private sector, and it gives transparency for the public to be able to access that list. So that was why that was very important for us to do. We don't know where those numbers will be with the next census, but we are firmly believing that it will be more than that 1%. We do know, and we do track with the city contracting. When we started, we were only at 12% spend for contracts with minority and women businesses. We doubled that number in the last 4 years, and we're at 23.67%. Almost at 24, but we're right there at it. And we give a lot of credit, not just to the other things we've done that I know we'll talk about shortly, but particularly that directory, knowing who those businesses are, knowing that they're ready, willing, and able to do contracting with the city, and then also knowing what the opportunities are is really, really important, and having them be prepared.
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question here. You have a directory of Black businesses for the city of Memphis, and then also you have contract opportunities in a directory there. for businesses as well, correct?
Yes, yes. So the directory, and thank you for asking that clarifying question. The directory is the buy901.net. It's not just Black businesses, it's all of our small businesses that are registered with our office that provide certification. And you and I are very familiar with the certification process, and I'm sure your listeners, some of them are as well. But we have that buy901.net. What you're referring to, in addition to the directory, is what we call our at a glance. It's a yearly forecasting of opportunities, not just with the city, but within our region. It includes our Shelby County government. So I mentioned, we have the multiple mayors, municipal mayors, and then we have our county mayor. It also includes opportunities with our utility company, with our transportation company, with private sector construction, general contractors, those that you might have heard of that are nationwide, like Turner Construction and Flintco and companies like that. And then it also includes other opportunities in the public sector with our economic development growth engine, who has agreements with those private sector companies that I mentioned, like the FedEx, the International Paper, Wright Medical, those companies that are here. So there's one page where all of these opportunities are. The last book that we produced for 2020, it was 96 pages. 96 pages of projects and opportunities, where it includes the budget, the requirements, the projected dates, the contact information of whom will be overseeing the project. All of that information is right there for small businesses. It's truly a treasure because, Ricardo, unlike those larger general contractors or companies that I mentioned, they don't have one person designated to look out for projects for them or to, do business development or sourcing. The business owner is usually the accountant, the marketing person, the person that opens up the doors every morning. So we felt really strongly through our We Mean Business Symposium and through this at a glance, which is when it's produced every year during the symposium, that it was important to get these opportunities in front of businesses. And I think it's unique, especially for this community, only because, like a lot of government agencies, we worked in silos. No one knew what they were doing, at the county, here at the city, and the city didn't know, what our private sector was doing. No one was communicating. And so when the mayor created the Office of Business Diversity and Compliance, he not only set out a call to the community for us to collaborate, but he put it in legislation. And that's something really important for your listeners to know. You can say you want to do things, but you have to put pen to paper. We have a councilman here that says, he said, you count what matters. So if you're not counting it, if you're not tracking it, if you're not legislating and putting policy to it, does it really matter to you? And the mayor has proven that this matters to him greatly.
Joann, you kind of said everything in a comprehensive way. And I want to kind of unpack it a little bit, talking about the different elements. You have the at a glance, you have the We Mean Symposium, you have the opportunities for vendors to be showcased, and then also procurement opportunities as well. Who's all involved? Has to be a capacity building portion of this. I mean, you mentioned the numbers of how low it is. You have 600 out of 47,000, 48,000 businesses in that space. How can you prepare your Memphis businesses to have procurement opportunities to really compete for those contracts and get those contracts as far as your spend?
Well, what we did, Ricardo, in identifying that, like you said, with the census, the 49,000 businesses, of that 49,000, we identified through research that only about 787 of them had more than 5 employees. And so what we said, or more than 1 employee, I'm sorry, but the minimum was like 5. And so what we did was we developed an initiative that we call the 800 Initiative. And the 800 Initiative is focused on assisting minority businesses with building capacity, customer identification, increasing their revenue to be able to take on those opportunities. Again, we call it the 800 because of that 787, we rounded it up to 800, but it's truly rooted in the original plan of Dr. King, which was economic justice for communities of color, for Black communities. And so we found that entrepreneurship is a way out of poverty for our community. We also found that Black businesses will tend to locate in their neighborhoods. They will also tend to hire from their neighborhoods. So Black businesses hire Black people. So we found it as a not just a prescription for building capacity for our businesses, but also for helping to address the ills of our community. So the 800 initiative is actually a partnership. Again, remember I said, the mayor said about giving a call to action to collaboration. Well, he said we've got to sweep our own porch, and we've got to, actually, not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. And so that collaboration is between an organization called Starco, which has been an organization here that's been helping startup tech companies and providing lean management training and things like that. Another organization called Epicenter, which has stood as kind of the startup business organization offering, social equity training and things like that. And then the private college, private university, Christian Brothers University, and then you've heard me mention FedEx. So we all came together with the City of Memphis and with county government and formed this advisory council to help execute the strategy for the 800 initiative, which is meant to take 50 of those businesses, that 700 plus, increase their revenue by $50 million over a 3-year period, and also increase their employees. And so it's providing everything from workshops to one-on-one seminars to networking opportunities, because people do business with people they know, people they like. I play golf myself now, but it was an acquired activity for me, not something that, just normally and culturally I grew up with. But people who go to church with, other corporate leaders and things like that, sometimes those things don't happen. So that networking and social introduction is very important. Again, I mentioned with Starco in the lean management, a customer identification. So all of this has happened in the last 3 years with the creation of the 800 initiative. And then FedEx infused $2 million to help build what we call the family and friends loan. So this joke used to be funnier when I would say no one has a father to give them $1 million, a small $1 million loan, but nevertheless, no one has the uncle to give them that either. And so with the family and friends loan, if it's 10,000, 20,000, businesses can get that loan, that small loan, to help them, maybe purchase equipment or inventory to help them to be able to participate in these opportunities.
Well, it sounds like a great partnership. I mean, you figure you got corporations, universities, you have, I guess, a foundation, it seems like, involved with it to some degree, and a third-party entity, I'm assuming, for the capacity building. And I guess the question that I want to share, I guess want to ask you, and I'm quite sure that our viewers want to know, how did you select those 50 companies? You said you had 787. What were the metrics in selecting those? And what is the success after 3 years? You should have some outcomes as far as economic growth in Memphis.
Right. Well, I'll tell you this, Ricardo, selecting those companies was not necessarily selecting them, picking them out of the bucket at all. In fact, we were able to track, we served over 2,000 businesses while getting to that 50. So we serve those 2,000 businesses through some of those same kinds of trainings, workshops, one-on-one consultations. But in selecting the 50, what we did was, how likely are these businesses to be able to increase their revenue? How open are they in participating and engaging with the training? So, for example, with the university, they offered internships for their students to actually embed themselves within these companies for a year, to basically practice their skills, offering their services, receiving a stipend from the university, and then the company didn't have to pay them. So they had an employee on staff to help them with their business. So it's everything from marketing to creating, SOP, standard operating procedures books, business development. And in fact, some of these interns were later hired. But all of these things led us to, with these 50 businesses, and getting them selected and inducted into the 800 initiative, led them to be the ones that are starting out as our inaugural class. But there's 2,000 more, or 1,950 still there being serviced, that are building up. So we haven't basically inducted them into the 800, but they're still being served. The thing is that a business has to be willing to take on the opportunity and to do the work that's required on their side in engaging, participating, and utilizing the knowledge that they get from the program.
So that's great. It sounds like you have your core 50, then you have the 1950. That's your pipeline kind of moving forward. Exactly. And I guess you'll accept more. Is there a cap of how many you're going to accept in this program?
Well, no, actually, one of the things that we built in when the mayor created this, and he was, he kind of was the brainchild for it. He didn't put it in government for a reason, because he didn't want it to die or to be, expired or terminated through administrations. He didn't, government, a new public official, and he's term limited, a new public official comes in and he decides, I don't want to do the 800, I want to do the 500, and I want to change this. Well, that's why Christian Brothers University, who has an entrepreneurship innovation center on their campus, which they started in conjunction with the 800, they are the fiscal agent. So this operates outside of government, but in a collaboration. So the expectation was to build something that could be sustainable. After we saw how it worked, we knew that this needed to last longer than any one administration. So we hope that as we continue to build this program year over year, even outside of government, that we will eventually build many, many more businesses that can increase their revenue. And so you asked me about metrics. In the 3 years, 171 jobs have been created through this program. And in addition to the 50 million, we saw 24 million in new revenue being built for these companies. So approximately $74 million in new revenue just for these, total revenue just for these businesses.
And that's tremendous, because that's a small investment to have that type of impact. That's tremendous for you and your team to do that. And it's also smart, and I do want to emphasize that you mentioned that it was a university that actually is housing the program, that the City of Memphis actually funds, as well as the different partners with that. And so that's an ongoing thing. And I guess you have to go through your channels to fund that as far as city government is concerned. So now we talked about outside. You talked about the outside programming and how you could do that externally. Now we're going to roll you back inside and say, okay, the challenges of businesses, having city contracts, the payment, a lot of vendors complain about, hey, the city is so slow in paying their bills after, we've done the project, we're still waiting for it. And you and your team actually dealt with that issue and made some changes legislatively and then also internally as far as your policies. Can you explain what that is and how you did it?
Sure. We've been very fortunate here in City of Memphis government. Again, like I said, our mayor has been focused on public and private partnerships and collaborations. He's also been focused and been very open to bold innovations, bold changes in government. So breaking up the bureaucracy of how government interacts with businesses was definitely one of the strategies we put on the table when we came here in 2016. And we said, we need to know what's working, what's not working, and more importantly, what's holding us back. What's holding us back? What's holding the businesses back? And time after time, Ricardo, just like you said, my goodness, people were like, I cannot front the money that it requires to do business with the city. I can't wait 6 months. I can't wait 3 months. I can't wait 60 days to be paid. I need to be paid. I can't make payroll. We can't do it. And so a lot of small businesses will shy away from doing business with the city in order to keep their doors open. I mean, they literally would go bankrupt or have to close their doors and trying to wait on the city to pay them back. And so what we said was, how can we fix that? Well, the easiest way to fix that is to pay people, number one, on time. But even on time, which our policy was 30 days, that still wasn't good enough, especially for our small businesses. So our mayor allowed us to make the bold mandate that a small business will be paid within 15 days of receipt of their invoice, not receipt from the division to accounts payable, for receipt from the business. Meaning when they send it to us, to this division representative, that division representative has to get it paid, get it sent to accounts payable, and that check has to be cut or the ACH has to be made within 15 days. The way that we did that was really simple. We just took private sector processes and said, okay, we're going to apply this stamp to every invoice that's sent through our system. We're going to do it electronically, stop the hard copy, stop the old school, sending it in our office, which is the worst thing ever created, in my opinion. You're right down the hallway, just take it there. But nevertheless, we created an electronic system that identified our small businesses through, very importantly, that directory that I mentioned earlier, the buy901.net. Any business that is identified as a small business through that directory is flagged to our accounts payable, who then promptly knows that they have a minimum time to pay that invoice. It has worked tremendously. And again, I attribute a lot, especially the mayor's leadership, to the increase in that number. But that increase and that number has also caused more businesses to be willing to do business with the city.
Man, and that's intentionality. I mean, that's the word. Being able to kind of flag those businesses and saying, okay, we're going to pay you in 15 days, and I know you probably had to deal with a lot with that. Hopefully, sometime we'll bring you back on the show to talk about the specifics of that in a little more detail. And as we close the segment, I ask all my guests on the show, what does inclusion mean to you?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, Ricardo, and thank you for having us here. I will say this, inclusion means to me an opportunity to fairly and openly participate for all citizens of our community. Historically, Black people in this nation, have had it very hard, but it's not just Black people. We commemorated the Holocaust a couple of days ago, I believe. This nation has a history of trauma, but we also have a history of triumph. And so I truly believe that inclusion means that opportunity to openly and fairly participate for our nation. And I think, folks like us and those that are listening here in this broadcast, we're all committed to doing that. So your title of inclusion counts couldn't be a better title for why I believe we're all here and where our goals are to ensure inclusion.
Thank you for being on the show, Joan. We could continue to talk about this. Hopefully we'll have you back again in the future, and take care.
All right. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Welcome back to Inclusion Counts. Our next guest is Rodney Strong. Rodney Strong is the chairman of Griffin Strong, PC, a law and public policy consulting firm based in Atlanta, Georgia. He is currently the project principal for public policy consulting engagements with several state and local entities. A member of the State Bar of Georgia, he represents a range of public entity and corporate clients specializing in public contracting, community development, and real estate law. He also serves as the outside general counsel for the Fulton County, City of Atlanta Land Bank Authority. He is currently the supplier diversity consultant for the State Farm Arena, house of the Atlanta Hawks, being renovated in Atlanta. He is widely recognized as the foremost national experts in the area of procurement, disparity research, and supplier diversity program development. His experience in these areas began in 1985 when then Mayor Andrew Young appointed him Director of Contract Compliance for the City of Atlanta, a position he held in 1992 until 1992. He's a graduate of the University of Memphis, Cecil C. Humphrey School of Law, where he was a Hubert Hurf Presidential Law Scholar. He received his undergraduate degree in political science from Morehouse College. Rodney, welcome to Inclusion Counts. How are you doing today?
Ricardo, it's good to see you, as always.
So let's start. I mean, you have a rich history and you've been right through the kind of the changes in, as far as Atlanta, it's kind of like the base and Mecca that everyone looks at as far as the gold standard in contract compliance and minority participation. But I want to talk about your beginning days, kind of what motivated you to become a civil rights lawyer specializing in public policy.
Sure. Well, Ricardo, I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee during legal segregation. In fact, Memphis was so segregated that when I asked my parents in response to a television ad I saw on a kids show to take me to McDonald's, they had to tell me that they couldn't take me to McDonald's because it was segregated. Back at that time, the drive-in window at McDonald's was called the colored window, and they would hand you your hamburgers out of the side window. And my parents said, we're not going to, degrade ourselves by going to any restaurant that we can't go in and sit down and eat. That all changed with the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act when I was 9 years old. And I saw immediately that it was just a tremendous change. All of a sudden, places that I couldn't go, I could go. Places that my parents would have to explain to me, why we were segregated, why we were limited to not being able to walk into a movie theater and sit down. And we had to go to the colored section, which was upstairs in the balcony, and those kinds of things. All that disappeared in Memphis relatively quickly. Now, of course, as a student of history, I know that in a lot of the smaller cities in the South, those customs stayed in place even after the legal restrictions were lifted. But in a city like Memphis, a large city where there was an active NAACP chapter, immediately the African American community began to push the boundaries of what had been customary segregation. And I saw immediately the impact of public policy on your life. When you see that you can go to a restaurant and eat one day, but you couldn't do it the day before because the president signed a bill, it really helps you understand the importance of public policy. And of course, it was the great civil rights lawyers in Memphis, legendary civil rights lawyers in Memphis, that paved the way. They filed lawsuits, major cases that opened up opportunity for African Americans. And so I decided at a relatively early age that I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer. And so that's really what got me in this business.
Wow. I mean, you've probably seen the whole spectrum of it, experiencing that growing up and then now actually influencing and changing policy, not just where you were when you were growing up, but also across the country. And that kind of leads me to disparity studies. And in your bio, you're one of the national experts in regards to disparity studies. I think, during our prep call, we were talking about the city of Pittsburgh is considering looking at disparity studies. The last one that was done was 1999, and we're long overdue for it. But can you tell our Inclusion Count viewers, what is a disparity study? How did it originate? And kind of what are the components of it, of a disparity study?
Well, interestingly enough, it ties right into what I was saying earlier about my background, because toward the end of Dr. King's life, 1966, 1967, he was pushing for economic inclusion. He was fighting for poor people's rights. He used to say that what good does it do a man to have an integrated lunch counter if he can't buy a hamburger? And I was fortunate enough to attend Morehouse College while Maynard Jackson was running for mayor for the first time, and I worked on his campaign. And I thought the most exciting thing that Maynard Jackson did was to fight for economic inclusion, using the government as a tool to open up opportunities that had previously not existed for African Americans in a city like Atlanta, which was just as segregated as Memphis was during the period prior to the passage of the '64 Civil Rights Act. And so when I was a freshman in college, I began to work on Maynard's campaign. After that, in the ensuing years, after he took office, my sophomore year, he was pushing really hard on this area of minority business. And I realized that Atlanta was at the cutting edge of opening up these opportunities for African Americans and other minorities. And I worked in Maynard's administration for a few years after college. And then I went to law school in my hometown. I was able to win a scholarship to my hometown law school, University of Memphis. And the opportunity came up for me to come back under Mayor Andrew Young as Director of Contract Compliance. And we had a very strong program. And if you can imagine having, seen the level of discrimination that African Americans faced, it seemed a little bit absurd to me that there were court decisions that basically said that African Americans had to prove that there had been discrimination. But being an attorney, I understood the logic and the reasoning of the Supreme Court. And I worked with Franklin Lee, and Anthony Robinson at the Minority Business Legal Defense Fund, a number of other people, and we sort of recognized the opportunity that would exist to create an econometric type study to analyze the discrimination that African American businesses face and other minority businesses face, and to make a response to these court challenges. The court case that came down was called City of Richmond versus J.A. Croson, came out in 1989. I was director of contract compliance for the city of Atlanta. And fortunately, we had thought through how we would respond if the court ruled the way we thought that they might. They ruled in a way that we had anticipated. And I was able to convince Mayor Young to conduct the first major municipal disparity study. And so after the completion of the City of Atlanta disparity study, we worked to develop the Equal Business Opportunity Ordinance, which was the legislative response to the disparity study. And after it was clear that that was going to survive legal challenge, I left the city, started my own firm, and began to do disparity studies for cities around the country. I had spent a lot of time working with the National Forum for Black Public Administrators, working with the American Contract Compliance Association, working with a number of other organizations to try to get the word out that the fact that the Supreme Court had ruled that there had to be a factual predicate, a finding of discrimination by the government prior to having a minority and women business program did not mean the death knell of those programs. And so in my work, I was able to go around the country and more or less speak to civic leaders, city leaders. I talked to a number of elected officials, National League of Cities, so forth and so on, had those conversations. And we began to do this work. And so in the ensuing 28 years, it has become standard that if a government wishes to address historic inequity, that they have to first develop a factual predicate. And the way you do that is to conduct a disparity study. And so we do that work all over the country. Right now, we're working in 16 different jurisdictions. In some cases, we're doing disparity studies. In other cases, we're doing program development or consulting. And so that has been really my life's work, is opening up these opportunities through analyzing whether or not there is a need for a remedial program to address historic inequities related to minorities and women in a particular location.
Now, you did all these studies across the country. What would be the common themes throughout those studies and that every city or county or jurisdiction should have, that really is kind of like the linchpin, so to speak, in either tearing it forward or moving it backwards? What key things have you identified in those particular studies across the country, actually?
Well, disparity studies really, as I've alluded to earlier, are a creation of the courts. And so each step that you take in a disparity study is really dictated by what the courts say is required in order to make a determination as to whether or not a government needs to have a remedial program. There's a constitutional test called strict scrutiny, and it requires that in order to have a program that implicates race, you have to, under the 14th Amendment, do two things. You have to show that there is a compelling governmental interest, which means that you have to analyze statistically whether or not there is a disparity between the availability and the utilization of minority businesses in that marketplace. And you do that by conducting an availability analysis, a utilization analysis, and a disparity analysis statistically. It's also necessary to look at the policies and procedures of the government. So you do a policy and procedure analysis. And you have to do it within a certain relevant market. And what the courts have basically said is that that relevant market is tied to where you purchase 75% or more of your goods and services. And so you do a relevant market analysis. So there are a number of steps in a disparity study. And each jurisdiction is going to be somewhat different. And it depends to a certain degree on the history of that jurisdiction. But in almost every jurisdiction in the United States, African American businesses in particular have been excluded. First, de jure, by law, they were excluded from actually doing business with the government. And then de facto, more or less, these firms were not brought into opportunities. And so very frequently, you see situations in which large contractors have more or less done what economists call rent seeking. They have put themselves in a position where they're almost in a monopolistic position regarding certain types of trades and certain types of work in that particular marketplace. And one of the things that you seek to do is to analyze whether or not there's an open, fair, and equal competition in that marketplace for goods and services that the government produces. And so the government buys a lot of different things, but there are always situations where firms can get in and sort of be the incumbent and stay in that position. And one of the things you seek to do is to analyze whether that locks out firms that are owned by minorities and women from even having an opportunity to compete. And so all of that goes into a disparity study, because you're doing two things. You're trying to show that there's a compelling governmental interest. That is there discrimination, both through these historic processes, or are there present effects of past discrimination in the marketplace? And then you want to tie that to the actual practices that are going on in that marketplace so that you can make recommendations in terms of what kind of program development you'll have. Now, there are certain standard kinds of things that we see very frequently. For instance, we see situations where firms try to exclude minority firms by using unfair criteria in terms of judging those firms. You know, one of the first major discrimination cases that came out is the Duke Power case. And in that case, the Supreme Court ruled that you cannot set a particular job qualification that has a negative impact on minorities if it's not related to what you need for the job. In other words, you can't say that you have to have a college degree to be a janitor, because a college degree is not necessary to be a janitor. But if you set that as a job requirement, and you know that African Americans, for instance, tend to have finished college at a lower rate than white people, then you are in fact being discriminatory in the way you set the criteria. Well, that same principle applies when it comes to government contracting. What are the criteria? Why are you setting certain bonding requirements that are much higher than necessary for a particular job, or certain insurance requirements that are higher than necessary? Or why are you locking in certain particular specifications that only incumbent firms that are already distributors or have some kind of relationship with the product supplier can get the best pricing for, so that minority firms can't even compete? So there's a whole range of things that you look at. And oftentimes what you see is this bias toward incumbency, but the incumbency also implicates race, because historically African Americans and other minorities were excluded from developing the relationships that would allow them to be the incumbent. And I could go on and on about that, but that's generally what you see. And that's why you have to have a very targeted, specific analysis that looks in a granular way at the business opportunities that exist in a particular jurisdiction. What are you actually purchasing? In what geographic market are you purchasing it? Who are you purchasing it from? And is there an opportunity for competition or for subcontracting for firms that aren't incumbents in that marketplace?
I'm glad you gave that very simple overview. I think a lot of people would understand that. And it sounds like the onus is on governments, and specifically procurement and purchasing departments, and how they're writing those specs to make it equitable for vendors to participate and be involved with.
Yeah, the government, just to piggyback on that, the government, I mean, the courts use a term that governments do not want to be a passive participant in a private scheme of discrimination. So you don't want, as a government, to participate passively in a private scheme of discrimination. You might not have set up the system, but the system has the impact of negatively impacting minority and women businesses in your community.
And I guess that there has to be some type of litmus test to kind of look at that too. And that's part of the disparity study as well, looking at the policies and how to change those policies moving forward, as well as the procurements that are out there that are
Correct.
being measured. Now, has there been any type of study as far as the corporate business sector at all? Or I'll ask that question.
Yeah, I mean, the corporate business sector does not have the same limitations. Okay. In other words, the private sector can make decisions within certain boundaries. In other words, if the government makes the decision that it is going to give a preference to businesses that are owned by African Americans, let's say, then that implicates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. That really doesn't apply to private actors. And so a private actor can say, these are the criteria that we have. Now, if it's particularly discriminatory, they could be sued and you could make an argument. But so far, no one has really challenged the supplier diversity efforts of private corporations.
Yeah, I asked that question because that was in your bio, that you were part of supplier diversity initiatives as well for corporations. What key changes, I guess, when you're in that space to kind of open the floodgates, so to speak, or opportunity for minority vendors?
Well, the reality of it is that if government is being an advocate to grow the minority and women business community within its jurisdictions, then many times you will find governments that decide that they're going to use their taxing power to influence the private marketplace. And so we've done a lot of private sector work. When I first started the business, we were about to have the Olympics in Atlanta. That was a private sector endeavor, but obviously it was a public-private partnership. And so the Atlanta city government made it clear that they wanted minority participation in the Olympics. And we got a substantial amount of minority participation in the Atlanta Olympics. Never before or since have African-American firms benefited like they did from the Atlanta Olympics. And then subsequently, our next major private sector engagement in Atlanta was with the world of Coca-Cola. They had gotten a tax credit through Invest Atlanta for building that particular facility, $150 million facility. And so one of the things that the city said was, if you're going to get our tax dollars as a tax incentive for building this facility, we want you to include minority and women-owned businesses. And they hired our firm to serve as the supplier diversity coordinator. And we had to go inside. We worked inside the Coca-Cola company, inside their corporate headquarters. We learned how their procurement process worked. We worked with their global head of supplier diversity. We worked with, we were embedded within the program management team. And I'm gonna tell you, they have a corporate culture that wasn't particularly inclusive. And we had to, go through a lot of different channels. At one point, there were some people who pushed back and said, well, it's illegal for us to make these decisions. And we had to go and deal with the law department inside Coca-Cola to get everybody to recognize that they certainly did have the ability to do what we were asking them to do. And ultimately, we were successful in getting over 35% participation on the project. And in addition to that, our firm won the Partner in the Promise Award, which is the highest supplier diversity award that the Coca-Cola company gives. But it's not an easy process in a lot of organizations. And that has to do with the fact that, to a certain degree, as I was alluding to with government, it's the same thing with corporations. There are companies that have been doing business in a certain way for a long time and have relationships with the people who are inside these organizations. And if you're going to open up opportunities for African Americans, other minorities, and women, you have to break down these historic barriers, and there's resistance internal to the organization to those types of activities. Nevertheless, we were successful in that environment, and we've been successful in other environments. Almost every time we've had a private sector supply diversity opportunity to work on a project, it's been because there were public dollars involved. The Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, the $1.5 billion project that was built by the Atlanta Falcons, Arthur M. Blank Enterprises, AMB Corporation. They made a commitment and they stuck to it, and they were very easy to work with, great organization. But they did it because the city of Atlanta allowed a certain amount of tax dollars to go into that project. Somewhere in the neighborhood of $300, $400 million worth of tax subsidies and other things went into that project. And it's, obviously it's owned by a private actor. But it was felt that it was a civic benefit in doing it. And so generally we've had those situations. The State Farm Arena, which is our most recent public-private partnership where we work with the Atlanta Hawks, that arena is owned by the Fulton County City of Atlanta the Fulton County City of Atlanta Recreation Authority. And so private sector actors will respond and work in this area. But our experience in Atlanta is they work a whole lot better when the government is leaning in saying, we want some participation on this project.
Yeah, it sounds like to have skin in the game, you could leverage a lot of participation from that. Let's kind of take it back a few steps.
Sure.
We have community groups that, want input, want to be involved and so forth. How do you kind of infuse community advocacy and activism on these different types of projects, whether it be the Mercedes-Benz Stadium or just a local facility within the city of Atlanta being done? Kind of give me an example of how you could use advocacy from the community to get their input.
Yeah, well, it's funny. We've done projects in a number of different places. And it's different in every jurisdiction. But what you do need is a certain amount of private sector actors that are putting pressure on the government to respond in this area. Okay, that's been my experience. And so a lot of times when governments do disparity studies, it's because you have a local Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, African American Chamber of Commerce, Business League chapter that is pushing very, very hard on elected officials to actually conduct a disparity study, to look at where the opportunities are, to set goals on projects, to create more opportunity. And so private sector advocacy on the part of the minority business community and advocates for the minority business community is critical in terms of getting the level of support that's necessary. Now, also, I think that it's sometimes a situation where these advocacy groups can be helpful in terms of outreach. In other words, if you've got a program, your program is established, one of the things you want to do is to outreach to businesses that could benefit from doing government contracting. Sometimes companies have developed a niche. They're great at putting down hardwood flooring. They're great at doing roofing, but they have not yet decided that they wanted to commit to the level of paperwork and insurance and bonding that's required to do government work, because government work requires a certain level of sophistication. And sometimes some of these local advocacy groups intentionally identify firms that they think have potential and then help those firms using what we call supportive services, helping them to develop their business processes, giving them financial assistance, helping them develop their lines of credit, develop their insurance and bonding capacity, giving them technical assistance, helping them understand better how to respond to government RFPs and government bids. So local advocacy groups have a range of things that they can do, both on the advocacy front and on the outreach and technical assistance and supportive services front to assist in growing the local minority and women business community in any jurisdiction.
Wow. I mean, the previous guest I had was Joann Massey, and she talked about the 800 initiative that they invested in 50 businesses in Memphis and provided everything that you said to them. And they really have been very successful. You figure in 3 years, they did the 50 million that they guaranteed themselves to do far as a target, and added $24 million in additional new receipts and new revenues from those 50 businesses. I mean, the impact is amazing. And what you're saying, if more jurisdictions across the country are doing this, you'll see more of that economic impact in those cities, in those states, in those countries. I mean, not those countries, those states, in those counties around the country. Rodney, I mean, we could kind of talk shop, all day on this. You've been a wealth of knowledge and a mentor to all of us in the space. When I asked, as we're closing out, I asked all my guests, what does inclusion mean to you?
Well, when we completed the first major disparity study for the city of Atlanta, and that was 30 years ago. 30 years ago in last May of 2020 was 30 years. Dr. Andrew Bremer, Dr. Ray Marshall were the lead on that. And we had a statement that that they put in there. They said, these programs will no longer be necessary when opportunity is as pervasive as discrimination once was. And that's what I say. Inclusion is about making sure that opportunity is pervasive and is as pervasive as discrimination once was.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to do that, to put the bed to discrimination, hopefully in my children's lifetimes, and my children are 6 and 10. Again, thank you, Rodney, for being on the show. Hopefully you won't be a stranger to Inclusion Counts, and as well as me. And thank you for supplying your wisdom and knowledge about these different types of programs and getting the word out, and be willing to share this across the country. Again, thank you for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. I just appreciate the opportunity, and thank all of you out in the audience. I really appreciate you taking a moment to listen to what I had to say.
Thank you. And that wraps up the show.